All right. Chapter 8, Flies and Spiders. Probably the darkest chapter yet, right? Um, if you can believe it, after the whole episode with Gollum and the goblins and all that. Um, remember that Tolkien, with his kids, remember he wrote this for his kids, he's kind of leading them along into darker and darker situations. And I think it's a very natural progression, even a personal hero's journey for a reader, especially a young reader, to become more brave as they come into contact with these imagined situations. So we enter Mirkwood, dark, corrupted, scary place. Um, there's this mood that's very, it's very dark, essentially. Remember, tone is the feeling that an author has towards a subject, and mood is what a reader feels while they're reading. And they're not always the same, but in this case, just looking at the way that Tolkien describes Mirkwood in the first couple pages of this chapter, very dark and scary. So you could say that the tone and mood are very similar in this case. Go back and read the first couple pages and just pay attention to how he describes things. There's these things that should be good. Tolkien is usually a fan of trees, but these trees are twisted and starved for light, and sunlight going through the trees is strangled. Everything is just dark. Um, very scary place. They spend a lot of time in Mirkwood, long enough that they're able to eat up all of their stores. Essentially, Beorn gave them a lot of food, a lot of supplies to try to get them through the forest, and it doesn't last because Mirkwood is just so big, and there's just nothing there for you to be able to eat or to replenish your supplies. They tried to kill a squirrel to eat it, but it wasn't good. It was foul tasting. They gave up on that. No water for them, so they're thirsty beyond belief by the time they get to it. Things really start to happen once they reach that enchanted stream. Remember, Beorn warned them about this stream, told them not to touch it, not to drink it, which they attempt to do. Bomber ends up falling into it and falls into a deep sleep and doesn't wake up until much later, having forgotten most of their adventure. So I think there are a lot of parallels between this stream and other examples in mythology or other fairy tales. We'll talk about the deer in just a second as well. If you're familiar with Greek mythology, think about the underworld. This place where dead spirits go. To get to the fields of Asphodel, you have to go through the river Lethe, which is very similar to this enchanted stream. It's a river of forgetfulness. It wipes the memories of your life away. And it's also a barrier. You have to get from the world of the living across the river to get into the land of the dead. In this case, they're not going to the land of dead. You could say they're more going to the land of fairy, especially with the appearance of the white deer. You don't see white deer a lot. The real world, we have albino deer. They're very rare. But in mythology and fairy tales, they're almost always a symbol that you are no longer in the regular world, which is true because they're going from regular Mirkwood into the Mirkwood that is controlled by dark forces as well as the elves, kind of in conflict. We have these wood elves that we'll meet here in a bit as well. But there's parallels between the stream and the deer and a lot of mythology, so we can know that we're no longer in the normal world. There's going to be more magic. There's also going to be more danger, which we see when they leave the path, which no surprise because they're warned not to. Of course, they leave the path. They try to get to these elven feasts that disappear instantly by magic. I said that there's not a lot of flashbang magic in Tolkien, but there are races, especially the elves, who have quite a bit of magic and are able to use it. So they go on this fruitless chase 3 times to interrupt the feast, which the elves are not happy about. And finally, after the third one, they're left in the dark, and the majority of the company, excluding Thorn, who's taken by the elves, are taken by massive spiders. And I know a lot of people have a fear of spiders, so this chapter is probably terrifying to think about. But we get some beautiful moments, actually. And by beautiful, I mean miserable moments. So we have Bilbo's most miserable moment, which is how it's described. Really becomes a low point in Bilbo's journey. Again, he's left by himself. All of his big character moments are, well, they all happen when Bilbo is by himself. He has several more firsts beyond what happened in chapter 5. He uses his sword for the first time. He sings his first self-written song, which even he would admit isn't very good, when he's taunting the spiders. And he really becomes the leader of the expedition at this point. He rescues the dwarves, which he hasn't really done until this point. So big moments of character development for him as he comes into this nadir, or this low point. And if you're familiar at all with the hero's journey, I won't talk about it too much in this class, although I definitely could, because it's a really cool archetypal journey that a lot of scholars have written about. Joseph Campbell especially is the one that codified the hero's journey from the monomyth. But there's this idea that all stories kind of follow the same pattern, and part of that pattern is this low point, this nadir, where the hero will emerge from it triumphant, changed, more powerful, which is definitely the case for Bilbo. You know, he goes ham on these spiders. He becomes like an action hero almost, and is able to save the door. So really cool things happen in this chapter. Really dark chapter, really scary. But we'll see what happens in the next chapter.